Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Commander Pod, your Magic the Gathering podcast for all things Commander. I'm Spencer Simpson.
And I'm Kelton Howell. We have a very interesting story to tell. Well, at least Spencer does. And we're going to talk today about buying singles and protecting yourself from counterfeit Magic cards. So, Spencer, tell us what happened to you. You were looking at purchasing some pretty high-cost cards recently, right?
Yeah, so I was perusing Facebook Marketplace, as I tend to do, and I found somebody who was selling their Dragon deck at a pretty steep discount. And I had been messaging back and forth with them about it, and they seemed to be pretty legit. They were just looking for some cash, wanting to offload it, not wanting to piece out individual cards. And so that sniff test for me was like, cool, this seems like legit. Let's go check it out. Before I went, Kelton said, make sure you bring a jeweler's loop, which I almost brushed off entirely and was like, no, this guy seems legit. We've been chatting. But I did buy a jeweler's loop the day before, canceled one day because I had something come up, fortunately, and went down about a 40-minute drive to check out this Dragon deck and just make sure the cards were real and maybe buy it. As I got down there, he let me in. I started looking at the deck, started looking at some of the cards. They seemed legit. And then we started looking at some of the high-value cards in the deck. He was playing the Ancient Dragons. He had Old Gnawbone in the list. So he had some pretty high-value dragons.
And they were like cool printings, a lot of them,
and there were
right?
cool printings of them as well. Yeah, exactly. And so I checked in one of the cards. One of them was a foil Mana Confluence that I was interested in. And I looked at it and was like, this looks like legit to me. It was foil from a Secret Lair. Had a little bit of had a teeny bit of Pringling to it, which is like, I was like, yeah, that seems legit.
That's
For
legit.
the course. That's like a Magic card. And so felt pretty good about that one. And then we moved on to some of the higher value dragons. Took a look at Old Gnawbone. And I was looking at this card through my jeweler's loop backwards because I had never used one. And noticed that something was a little bit off with this card. And I only had kind of known about one of the tests that you can kind of do, which is, or maybe one or two, which is, the one I know, though, is you look at the green dot and that you look for like a little L. And we're going to talk about some of these. But I was looking for that on the card and didn't really see it. And some of the card looked a little bit different. And so I quickly pulled out my phone and called Kelton, who answered the phone, thank goodness. And was like, here are some of the tests you can do. And they were fakes. All of the cards over $10, except for the Mana Confluence and his commander, the Dragon, were fakes in the list.
That's so sad.
And unfortunately for this guy, he was not trying to pull the wool over my eyes or anything like that.
Yeah.
He had bought these from someone else on Facebook Marketplace, had bought all of the dragons. There was a Enchanting Tales anime-ristic study and a borderless what's it called? Borderless Great Henge in the deck as well.
Oh my goodness.
There were some pretty high-ticket items, and they were all fakes. They were all fakes.
You told me that the total value of this deck was like $1,000 or something like that.
Yeah, it was about $1,000.
That is crazy. I feel so bad for that dude. And he was super cool about it, if I remember correctly. And he took down the listing from Facebook Marketplace immediately. Like, he didn't want to pass on fakes to anybody. So
clearly, obviously devastated that his high value deck, he'd traded for most of them. So he wasn't out cash necessarily. But how
that almost feels worse.
Yeah, it kind of does. That you're trading some of your cards for these.
Yeah.
For this garbage, basically, right?
That's really rough. Well, we want to make sure that does not happen to any of you out there as well. So we have put together some of the different tests that you can do to see if a card is fake. And we do have some visual examples for some. So if you are listening to the podcast, then it might be good to check out the video for this one as well. So I'll say before we jump into this, before we actually look at some of these tests, I'd say the first thing is to trust your gut. A lot of these differences can be very minor and very difficult to tell with the naked eye. But if you play enough Magic and if you hold enough Magic cards, there's something different about them that when you pick up a fake, there's something about the feel of the card or the sheen of the card that might tip you off to think, oh, I should take a closer look. And just trust that feeling, because a lot of the time that's gonna pay off. It has for me. I have found fakes from TCG player orders that I've had that just I didn't have any reason to check them other than the fact that when I pulled them out of the sleeve, they just didn't look quite right, and I couldn't say why.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't even have to be about the card, right? Just try to be pretty discerning about who you're buying from, and if you meet them in person, if you can. I recently just bought a high value card today, actually, as we recorded. And I decided to meet him. I brought my jeweler's loop. It's good to invest in one of those. But I also went to an LGS. I said, hey, let's meet at an LGS. Let's have someone there take a look at this card. And obviously, like, maybe you don't want to do that for like a $1 card, $2 card or whatever. But typically, if you're buying stuff, I feel like off of Facebook Marketplace, you're buying like 15, 20, however much money you're spending, but more high ticket items. And those are the things people are more likely to fake. So just try to even read the vibe of the person you're buying from. And like, obviously don't judge people. Like some people maybe are just more awkward and may not be able to communicate particularly well. But like, there's sometimes a little bit of tells when they're messaging you or when you're meeting with them that are like, might be more obvious potentially if they're trying to fleece you. So
yeah, and I like your suggestion to meet at an LGS because they can help you do some of these tests and they can provide another opinion. So it's not just coming from you, that it's coming from also a source of authority.
Yeah, and if they refuse to do that, then don't buy from them. Like,
yeah,
that's
totally.
Someone who's trying to fleece you is not gonna go meet at an LGS to have them verify the card.
Absolutely.
I will say though, in terms of trusting your gut on the card, pardon me, that can be kind of tough because sometimes print runs feel a little bit different. Like I remember certain sets, it might have been like Bloomborough, that I remember being like, this feels a little bit smoother than normal, or maybe is a little bit bendier than normal, and they're just like where they're sourcing the cards from or where they're printing them from feels a little bit different. But the tests we're going to talk to you about are pretty consistent across. I think most of them work for every set. There was maybe one set that one of these tests didn't work for. But for the most part, they're pretty consistent across printings.
That's very true. I mean, for this conversation, I pulled out my copy of Upheaval, which is one of the From the Vault printings of it. I remember when I had ordered this, and it's a foil card. I remember when I ordered it and I pulled it out of the sleeve, I was like, well, this is the fakest Magic card I've ever seen. Like, this is obviously extremely fake. Like, you can see that the foil pattern is extremely different from anything else. And if you look at it, I mean, just the entire texture of the card is totally different. And so I did a quick Google search, and turns out they just did a completely different printing technique for the From the Vault cards than they did for other sets. So there are very few sets where the printing is different, but pretty much every one of these checks should work for all of your cards. So without further ado, let's jump into the first one. You mentioned this one as the green dot test. So we have an image here. The one on the left is a real Magic card. It's the green dot from a real Magic card. I took it on my iPhone with my jeweler's loop to magnify it. And the one on the right is one of the fake cards that Spencer saw when he was looking to buy this deck. So a couple of things that you can notice about this are there should be about 4 red dots making an L shape in the highlighted part of the green dot. Now, it can actually be very difficult to tell. You may be squinting very closely. If you don't know what to look for, it can be sometimes difficult to find that little red L. But what you'll see in a lot of fakes is not that they're necessarily even missing the red dots, but that there's a lot of them and that they're kind of scattered throughout the image. They don't form that little L shape.
Yeah, that's what I noticed when I was looking at some of these, is like, and I'm not a professional by any means, but sometimes it was easier to spot when the red dots weren't there. Like looking for the red dots, you're like, yeah, I think this is maybe it. But as you move over to a different card, it just looks so grossly different that you can say, oh, this isn't the pattern I'm supposed to be looking for. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Definitely. The other thing that can really help is to look at the actual outside of the green dot, the black border, because the right and the bottom sides of the green dot should be flat. So you'll see, especially in this example of the real one that I have, you can see on the right side, you can see how the border actually flattens. It looks like it's like lopsided on that side. And then on the left side, it'll have 4 very distinct nubs where the rosette pattern and that black border meet, and every green dot should have those 4 nubs for the most part. So that's another thing that you can look for.
Yeah, and while we're looking at this image, I think one thing that has become pretty clear to me as I've been staring at these images of fakes is that the rosette pattern is pretty consistent as well on real Magic cards, and you can see it's like pretty black heavy in the rosette pattern. That's how they're darkening it rather than adding more saturation of blues, reds, greens, yellows, whatever they're using in their printing process. As you can see on the right, on the fake card, there's just like
tons of
more
colors.
tons of colors. Yeah, and you have some of those same colors, but the saturation is coming from black. Like the darkening of the hue, I guess, is coming from the black dots.
Yeah, so that rosette pattern is kind of, you're seeing a bunch of circles, little dots stacked on top of each other, and that's actually the way they print the Magic card. Is there's a bunch of different layers of different colors of ink. So they'll do like the blue layer and the red layer and the yellow layer and the black layer, and that's what makes up that rosette pattern, is like the little dots of each color that they're using to make the composite color. And you can see it is very different on the real one. And you're actually going to notice that on several of these examples. So let's jump to the next one. The next example is the mana symbol. You can actually look at the mana symbols, and a lot of that has to do with how they print the black layer.
Yeah, they print the black. So what they do is they print the colors on the card. You can correct me if I'm wrong here. They print the colors on the card, and then they print the black mana symbols on top as a separate, like, inked layer that's not going to have a rosette pattern in any way. Exactly. And so that's true of the text as well, I believe, on the card.
That is true.
But it is more obvious in the mana symbols.
Exactly, yeah. And the mana symbols are just an easy place to look every time, because the text boxes, sometimes they change the opacity of the text boxes and they like put art over the top of it. But the mana symbols are just always pretty much going to be in the same place and have the same treatment. You can see on the real one, it's much more crisp and those lines are much more well defined, where on fake cards, the black is going to bleed into the rest of the rosette pattern and the background a lot more. So you really want to look for those crisp black lines on any black portion of the card. Even if the lines aren't straight, even if they have like a little jagged edge to them, they're still going to have like very crisp borders.
Yes, and in this image, it's actually like relatively difficult to tell. I found this was easier to tell on cards that aren't black mana pips.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Because other color pips will also have a rosette pattern over them that you can easily tell. And so you can tell that the rosette pattern's going through the card when it's not actually like black that it's showing. And that was a way that was really helpful for me to tell as well, is that it wasn't like dark red ink on top of a red mana symbol. It was a red mana symbol and then darker red managed by, again, those layers of colors of dots, but just more saturated in that area.
Yep. The next one is the t-test. I really like this one. This is one that I hadn't known about until a few months ago, and now it's one of the primary ones that I use to check because it's very easy to see. The T in the word the on the back of a Magic card should be straight on the left side, and then it will have jagged edges on the other three sides. So on the top, on the right side, and on the bottom of the T, you're going to see these little jagged, they kind of look like jack-o'-lantern teeth. But the left side is going to be straight, and fakes don't really have that. They are the lines may not look distinct at all, like in the fake example that you saw that we have a picture of here, or they're just going to be kind of all messy.
Yeah, the picture on the right here, there's the fake, is actually a picture I took of one of the fakes I was looking at, and you can tell that it doesn't have that really straight line. And actually, this, like Kelson was saying, this is the easiest of the tests, I think, that has helped me identify fakes. And
because the red dots can be kind of hard to see in the green dot test.
Yes,
that can be very difficult. This one is so straightforward, and it's so easy to see that straight line on the left-hand side and know that this is a real card.
Yes, absolutely. So what I would recommend is that this is the first place I look, and then I go and do the other tests as well, because using multiple of these tests is going to help you really determine if something's a fake, because I don't know how easily someone could replicate this or whatever and like actually put it on the back of a Magic card. But thus far, as I've been looking through fakes at my real cards, every one of my real cards that I've looked at has this line on the back.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, my only reference point for fakes was, I guess fortunately kind of, was my most recent experience.
Sure.
But this has been pretty consistent on real Magic cards, that it always is this solid line on the left, teeth going around the outside.
Yeah. So these three tests, the green dot test, the mana symbol test, the t-test, these are the three that I use to check first. There are some other ways they can be a little more difficult to perform and potentially a little less reliable. The first one would be the weight of the card. If you have a scale that is accurate enough and precise enough, you have to have a very sensitive scale, but you can weigh the card in question against a real Magic card, and real Magic cards should be quite consistent in their weight, though some older cards in some sets have slightly different weights to them. So you kind of have to also know about the set that you're testing for at the same time. So that one's a little bit more difficult to do.
Interesting. Yeah, and a more sensitive scale is going to be way more expensive than just
A jeweler's
buying
loop.
a jeweler's loop. Yeah, exactly. The next thing is the rosette pattern. We mentioned this a little bit in one of the first cards that we were looking at, or one of the first examples, is that the rosette pattern will just look different on a fake card. Now, having a point of reference with a real card is very important. So if you are going to buy cards, another thing I would recommend is bringing a card of yours that you have verified to be real. And so you can have a side-by-side comparison to see what you're looking at, and just double check, because while some of these tests are easy to see if you've seen them a bunch, it's going to be easier if you have a point of reference. That was one thing I was really grateful for as I went down to buy this deck, is that some of the cards were real, and I could go back and forth and say, okay, this looks real. Because going in, I was like, I don't know if any of these are real. And as I talked with Kelton and figured out like what the actual signs were, I found a card that I was able to verify to be real and then compare. And that was really, really immensely helpful to be able to compare that way.
Definitely. And make sure that you always compare cards with from the same set when you're comparing the rosette pattern, because like we said, depending on where it was printed, when it was printed, it can have like a slight difference to it. So it really helps to have something from the same time period, the same print set.
Another tip that Kelton gave me as I was about to get scammed was that you can shine a light through the card as well. Now, this doesn't work as consistently between sets, because they sometimes print through different printers or whatever. But typically, Magic the Gathering cards will have a blue binding at the core of the card that's binding the two sides of the cards together is going to be like blue adhesive or whatever they're using, the core, I guess. But when you shine a light through the card, you'll see, I usually look at the back of the card and shine it through the front, and you can see a little bit of a blue tint, and the light will shine through pretty well. I don't know how this works for foiling. I think with foiling,
I don't think it works for foiling.
Yeah, I think the foiling will reflect it off of the front. But I was able to read on some of these cards, even like the text from the front of the card, from the back, you can see the text shining through. And as I was looking at some of the fakes, they tend fakes, I think a lot of time will have like a black core, and so I couldn't even see the light through, or could barely see the light through. Now, I could barely see the light through on some of the real cards as well. So again, this isn't super consistent between sets, but it is another confirmation point that you can use as you're trying to verify the legitimacy of cards.
And best used in like a very dark room where you can get a lot of light on the card, and that's the only light that you can see. That can
absolutely
help a lot as well.
Absolutely.
There's also a thing that you can do with UV light that I've never tried, but apparently if you shine a UV light on the back of a Magic card, it'll reflect in a very different way than like a proxy or a fake card. And so like
it's not going to change colors like a Del Sol shirt.
No, no, it's not. But it is going to reflect it differently. The ink that they use is UV reactive, which is interesting. So
that is cool.
And then the last tests that get cited a lot. Oh, actually, we have a couple more. One of the tests that gets cited a lot that we don't recommend, obviously, are the bend and the rip tests. So the bend test is that real Magic cards. I'll take a card here, a common here, should spring back when they're bent. So you can bend them pretty far, and then when you spring it back, it should mostly come back up and not stay bent, right? And I say bend, not crease. If there's a crease in the card, you've gone too far. And I would never use this test. I would be too worried that I'm going to damage the card, right? Because as soon as you kind of get a bend in a card, it doesn't necessarily always come back. So I don't recommend that one, though that is one that you'll see quite frequently on the internet. Another thing, though, is that you can rip a card to see what color the core of the card is. So the only time I would use something like this is if there's like a very large collection that I'm very worried about. I could pick out like one card that's not worth a lot of money. I could rip it and see what the core looks like. And we actually have some pictures here. I ripped one of my real cards and one of my proxies. You see that the real card uses a blue core, like we talked about before, and the proxy is using a black core. So
wow, are these pictures from your actual cards?
They are pictures from my actual cards.
Wow, and the one you ripped on the left was a reserve list card. And
yes, not a common from Final Fantasy, which I have way too many of right now.
And once you're doing this comparison, it's a little bit too late. So this is kind of your last resort. I think the guy that I was buying from actually did end up ripping one of his cards After I had confirmed most of them were fakes, and we were able to see this on the inside of his card as well. And he
Was
like,
it black?
It was, yeah.
Yep. There you go. There's another one that I learned about fairly recently that I haven't tried too often yet, but I think it's also very similar to like the T-test where it can be pretty easy to see. There's a few things that you can look for in the Deckmaster logo as well, where there's actually some jagged lines on some of the letters of the Deckmaster logo that end up being very smooth in fakes. I'm going to link to a few extra resources that people can look at. If they want to see more visual examples or some other tests that you can do, you can check out some of the links in the description, and the Deckmaster logo will be one of them. And then the last one that I wanted to talk about is very interesting because some of these tests that we have talked about today require you to look at the back of a Magic card. And something that I've been seeing a lot on Reddit recently is Final Fantasy cards that have been faked. And a lot of the rare Final Fantasy cards are double-sided. And so you can't use the T-test and you can't use the green dot test to verify if they are correct. So one thing that you can look at, if there's not many things for you to look at on the card, is the paintbrush symbol, where it credits the artist on the bottom of a Magic card. It has the set, the language, a little paintbrush symbol, and then the artist name. And the paintbrush symbol should be nice and crisp and not have any like bleeding from the black touching the white. You'll see a little bit of blue bleeding if it's a fake, but it should be a nice crisp black line if it's real.
Wow. Interesting. Okay, yeah. I had never heard of that test. That is fascinating.
That one was new to me as well with the Final Fantasy set as I started to see some of the double-sided fakes.
Yeah, because that is a conundrum. I have some proxies of Malakir Rebirth that I'm just never going to trade a Malakir Rebirth because
you can't remember which ones are which.
Yeah, I can't remember which ones are fakes or real. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that is a struggle with double-sided cards for sure.
Definitely. I do want to say, I want to make a very clear note here. There is a difference between a proxy or a playtest card and a fake or a counterfeit card. Like you just said, you have copies of Malakir Rebirth that are proxies that look real. And unless you take a really close look at it, they're going to be nearly indistinguishable.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's okay.
I do think that's okay. That is one thing that maybe in terms of my proxies, I am less confident was a really, really good decision, except that like I'm happy that I have them like for like to play in other decks and I can flip them around. I don't have to like have that and another piece of paper that is like the other half of the card or whatever.
Yeah, because some of my proxies just all have white backs to them. And so when I have a double-sided card, I have two cards.
Sideboard.
Yeah, I have a sideboard. With my tokens, I usually just have like the other sides in my token stack of tokens.
Yeah, absolutely. But I do think this is really something that's really important to call out, is that proxies and playtest cards are very different from fakes. And part of that is intent, that you are not intending to sell these or trade these as real cards. You're intending to use them to playtest and to play with. And I think that intent comes through in how you print them. So I'm going to show you. This is the card, one of the cards that I just got. And so one of these is a proxy and one of these is real. And you can tell which one is a proxy mostly because it has a modern
Because it has a modern frame.
Has a modern frame on it is the way you would tell with this card. But the other way you would tell is because the back of the card has this on it and not a Magic the Gathering back. So if you are going to proxy, please don't put a Magic the Gathering back on this because it is possible to potentially put things in circulation or unintentionally. Like that, the intent to playtest, I think, would have somebody be putting this back on their card.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
I
Or
agree.
something that is not Magic the Gathering affiliated in any way. Or not Magic the Gathering affiliated, but attempting to be a real product, right?
Yeah. And just don't trade or sell proxies. Just don't do it.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. Like just keep them separate. They're for your use. You printed it off. You had it made for you to use, or for your friend to use or whatever. But in general, just don't like buy or sell them. I just don't think it's great practice.
Yeah, no, but make them. If you don't want to buy additional cards, or if you want to play expensive decks, you want to play CDH. And it's harder with 60-card Magic Sanction formats because they don't want you to proxy. But in CDH or Commander, you're welcome to do that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about avoiding fakes now. So we're talking about avoiding printing fakes. Obviously, we don't want to do that. But how can we avoid if we don't have the opportunity to test, or we don't want to test, or we haven't been testing, or whatever, how can we avoid the need to test as regular, or be so wary of fakes?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is to be very careful where you're buying Magic cards from. Right? I buy them off of Facebook Marketplace. I buy them off of eBay. I buy them off of TCG Player. Those places all can have fakes.
Yep.
Stores. I mean, like, I've seen fakes in stores, right? That if someone's just not catching it, then they'll get sold a fake. So no matter where you're buying from, there is potential to get a fake Magic card if you're buying a single. If it's not a sealed product from Wizards of the Coast, then there's a potential for it to be fake. So just be very cautious and use your best judgment to only buy from places that seem reputable. Try to buy from TCG Player sellers that have a good sales history. Same with eBay sellers. From Facebook Marketplace, make sure that you ask a lot of good questions. You take a close look at the cards. You ask to meet an LGS so you can get a second opinion on them. And then when you do get your cards, always check them. Get a jeweler's loop. This one that I have, I'll show it on camera. It's nothing fancy. I think it's technically... It says it's 30x. I don't know if that's true. I bought this off of AliExpress for like $1 or $2. It's worked great. It works really well for me. Like, you bought one from Amazon. You had it like 2 days shipped so that you could check out those cards that you were buying, right?
Yeah, mine was a little more expensive. It was like $9, $8 or $9.
Yeah.
But it came with a little LED light on it that I could turn on so that if I was like...
And it also saved you hundreds of dollars.
Saved me hundreds of dollars. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So even if you're paying $9, $10 for a jeweler's loop, I mean, obviously trying to find a deal or whatever, but like it saved me $100. And for this card that I just bought or just traded for and paid a little bit of cash for, meeting an LGS, and I brought the cards I was trading with it and packed up my jeweler's loop. Because I was like, I'm not like gonna risk it with this one. And I think the moral of the story is here is that you want to insure yourself against bad actors. Because that's inevitable. You're gonna run into bad actors that are gonna try to be selling you fakes.
Or you're gonna run into people who have been scammed by bad actors. And they themselves are not bad actors, but there are just fake cards in circulation.
They're just out there, and that's a bummer. And so when you're buying, things to keep in mind is when you're buying from like eBay or you're buying from TCG Player, is, like Kelton was saying, buy from reputable sellers. And in the case that you get a bad card from someone who seemed reputable, there is recourse for you to reach out to eBay and TCG Player and get a refund and say, hey, this card is not as described. It is a fake. And you're able to get a refund for those cards.
Here's my fake card story time.
Yes, please.
I bought 3 visits from TCG Player, and it arrived, and I was like, this feels odd. This doesn't seem completely right. And it's not like it was a very expensive card. It was a 3 visits. And I took out a jeweler's loop or whatever I had at the time, and I checked it out. And I was like, oh no, this is not passing all of the tests. And I had some friends look at it, and they're like, yeah. One of our friends who is like an avid collector had him take a look at it, and he was like, this is absolutely a fake card. And so I was like, this isn't even an expensive card. And I didn't even think to check that it was fake. It was just that when I pulled it out of the sleeve, something fell off about it. And so I reached out to TCG Player, and they say, and in this case, I think TCG Player wants you to reach out directly to them, not necessarily even to the buyer or to the seller. And they had me send the card to them, and then they refunded me. So TCG Player wants to make sure that those cards aren't going back in circulation. They actually took the card from me themselves. And I was talking with the owner of one of the card stores near us, and she was telling me that expensive cards aren't the only cards that get faked. And in most cases, she brought out like a stack of fake cards that had come through the store. Wow. And she was like, and for the most part, they were cards that were like $2 to $5.
Wow, really?
Yeah. And she said it was because they're easier to move because people don't check them as often, right? And so it's easier to move a bunch of $2 and $5 cards, which I don't know that for all you scammers out there, I don't know that that's actually a good business plan. You should probably just stick to the higher value cards. But but it just means that everybody should be checking their cards if anything feels off, no matter what the price point is.
yeah. Well, it's easy if it's not like an expensive card, and if it doesn't have like, I don't know. For me, if it doesn't have like a little rare foil stamp, I'm like, sweet, this is just like a card. It's whatever, you know?
Yeah.
But I think those are the ones that like are even easier to fake, right? Is it
Yeah,
like
for
a foil
sure.
stamp
You don't
on
have
it?
to
It's
worry
like
about the foil
less-
stamp.
one less point of reference that you have to
And
try
people
to
aren't
going to
look at them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so check your cards. Buy from reputable sources. Buy
a jeweler's loop.
invest in a jeweler's loop. If you're buying any cards of any value, invest in a jeweler's loop. I came home from trying to buy that deck and immediately checked all of my high value cards.
Yeah.
I was like, all of the ones at least I had bought off of eBay or traded for or whatever. I was like, I better check these. Fortunately, I've not been able to find a fake so far.
Yeah.
But man, was I sweating on that 40-minute drive home.
I bet.
That maybe I'd
And it
gotten.
takes, if you're buying cards, it takes like all of 2 seconds to pull them out of the envelope, take a look at the jeweler's loop before you put them in your binder, right? So
Yep.
just take the time to do it. It's totally worth it. If any of you have had an experience with a fake card, let us know in the comments. We would love to hear your horror stories, and we hope that none of you got scammed, and that if you did, that you were able to get it resolved easily. Thank you all so much for listening. Join our Discord. Make sure that you are subscribed. And until next time, remember to always pay the one.